Hello, I'm Joseph Malazzi, creator of Dark Matter, and you are listening to Kneel Before Pod.
Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
Hello and welcome to the 50th episode of Kneel Before Pod. I'm your host Craig McKenzie, and we're at that time that comes but several times a year when a Marvel film is released. And talking to me about Guardians of the Galaxy is my own band of misfits from outer space. First up is Chris.
Hello.
Also, he's a raccoon.
Okay.
And Aaron.
I am Groot.
Yeah, he's Groot. Hello all. Are we all marvellous this evening?
I am Groot.
I was going okay until that pun.
See, what listeners don't know is this is all he says throughout the entire podcast. And you can just project your own dialogue onto Aaron for the next
What was actually supposed to happen was Chris was supposed to translate for me because he's the raccoon. It didn't happen.
Sorry.
We're not consistent with our nonsense.
Nope.
Okay, so Guardians of the Galaxy Vol.2 recently came out in cinemas. About 2 weeks ago for the UK, about a week ago for the US. So it might still be on people's minds. What were the initial thoughts? Aaron, you go first.
I did not like this one as much as Guardians 1. I think it was okay, but I have to admit I didn't really get that much out of it.
Okay. And Chris?
I've got to say I was a little bit disappointed. I still really liked the film, but it did not have that same appeal as Guardians 1 did to me either.
Interesting, because for me it's the opposite. I didn't really like Guardians of the Galaxy, I guess Volume 1, as it should be known from now on. But I did like this one. The humour annoyed me less. I got along with the plot. I liked the villain. I was pretty content throughout. It's too damn long though. It is too long, but I enjoyed it.
Well, that should make for a good debate then.
Yes, it should. So is there any other spoiler-free thoughts?
Put me on the spot. I am Groot.
Soundtrack was just as good, I thought.
Is that what you said, yeah?
That's exactly what I said. What Aaron said there was the soundtrack was just as good.
Yeah, well, it's the like the needle drop music cues. Yeah, it's. I did like the soundtrack. Yeah, that's fine. Very 80s soundtrack and whatever else. But I don't have anything else non-spoilery to say, so we could activate whatever our spoiler alert is. Okay, we're in spoiler territory. I guess first up is plot. You know, how was the story? Apparently this film is set about 3 months after the previous film, so they're still relatively new to the game of being a team of mercenaries, and they're still getting used to each other, which I thought worked quite well because it gets you a little bit of that we don't quite know each other dynamic from the first one, but also there's some familiarity there.
I think when it opened for me, though, with that, I was very wary of it falling into the same basket as Avengers 2 did for me, which was, this is now just more of the same. It's like the first one was the big reveal where all the information is, and then the second one is, and this is them doing their daily job. And you're thinking, well, that's not quite as interesting as it could be. I think it did avoid that, but the opening didn't really grasp me as making me definitely want to watch this.
Well, in a sense, it does open as more of the same, because the first one opened with a dance number, essentially. Or the first one opened with a flashback and then transitioned to a dance number. And then the second one opens with a flashback that transitions to another dance number.
It's more that you just see them on the job And I get that that is their job now, and that's what they're doing. We were supposed to be seeing them working together as a team, but somehow just seeing them doing their day job was perfectly okay. But it was like it's like that feeling you get when you're watching a filler in a TV series. It's all right, it's fine, it's good, but I wasn't blown away by it. I did like seeing Baby Groot knocking around while they were having a fight. I think that was a good idea. But then when there's just a bunch of people chasing them, it's like, well, yeah, there's a bunch of people chasing them. End.
See, I really liked the Baby Groot little dance number with all the action going on in the background while the music plays. I thought that was a great way of doing that in the introduction. But like you say, once it gets on to the sort of spaceship chase, it kind of felt like, oh, we've kind of seen that a little bit. But yeah, I thought the opener was pretty good. I found it really weird looking at the anti-aging makeup and kit that they're doing now on Kurt Russell at the beginning is just the way that CGI is going now.
Yes.
With them being able to sort of anti-age people at will.
Interesting tidbit about that. Apparently, Kurt Russell had very little digital facelifting done on him because he's worked with the same makeup guy since like Escape from New York or something like that, like 28 films, and this guy is able to make him look as young as he did 30 years ago.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, plus he plays it young. It's all about how he carries himself, and I was like, I was quite surprised to hear that, and I suppose we'll need to wait for the DVD extras to find out if it's actually true. But it's interesting that obviously you found it believable, whereas when you look at if you look at Ant-Man, for instance, young Michael Douglas, you can tell that there's some CGI work there, or the infamous Tarkin in Rogue One. You can tell there's work done there, but with Kurt Russell, I couldn't really tell, and that's because they haven't really done any. So there's a
fair play to him if he's got his acting skills up, yeah.
Yeah. Good old Kurt. Or good young Kurt, I suppose. Yeah, it's interesting you talk about how the film opens with sort of business as usual. I find a lot of superhero sequels begin with that. You've got, if you look at Winter Soldier, for instance, it essentially opens with him going on a routine S.H.I.E.L.D. mission. But it's still, I think it's pretty good. Now, I sometimes quite like to see the kind of, this is what they do all the time stuff before the plot introduces something that makes it worth following. You get an idea of just what they get up to day to day before things change a bit.
Well, it's kind of taking it down a line and seeing what they're now doing. They're now mercenaries, but good mercenaries for hire? Is that
no, they still steal stuff.
Planet saving on contract? I don't know.
Planet saving on contract where they also steal.
I think somehow it just wasn't.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of one of my issues with the thing, is I don't get... I don't know whether I need to watch it for a second time to get the absolute reasoning for, we were paid to protect these batteries and then I put them in my bag and stole them.
I think it's just because Rocket likes to nick stuff.
Not only that, it took them a very long time to notice. They didn't go and check the batteries that we were paid to protect before paying us. They just took us on our word and let us go.
And then Rocket does mention quite loudly in that room, I've got a bag full of batteries, or whatever the line was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's supposed to be just his devil-may-care nature, that he wants to push people, he wants to push other people's buttons to get that challenge back on himself. Probably.
And that was supposed to be his arc, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's all right. I suppose it's that, sort of going back to what he's good at, going back to the original sort of thieving and along that line. I do kind of get it. It's just the ensuing chase that I don't quite, and the unresolved chase that I don't quite get.
There's something about the trillion Daleks principle that bothers me about it too, because you don't believe they're in danger and you're supposed to believe they're in danger because there are a trillion Daleks chasing them in their little funky computer game chairs.
They're a target fleet thing. Yeah, that was amazing.
And there wasn't, just because there's so many blobs in the air does not make it more threatening. The threat is given to you by how the characters react to it, and there's a definite amount of believability to it, and you never really believe they're in danger. So the fact there are so many of them doesn't really have any impact on me. Although it might be nice to see them in their day-to-day job, I think the fight with the creature covered their everyday job because it shows how they personally were dealing with this, i.e. they just kind of flail around and manage to do it by luck as much as judgment, while Baby Groot knocks backwards and forwards and just does what he wants. And there's a comic turn to that, whereas them flying through space being chased by infinite glowing balls, it didn't have any personal meaning or any real threat value, so it's just a vehicle for then somebody else to turn up in another larger glowing ball who just immediately defeats all the other glowing balls. And that's Deus Ex Machina at its very worst. And at best it gives the characters a reason to go, oh, something happened, what was that? But that could be a knock at the door and have just as much effect, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they just had 3 heavily armed ships chasing them, if it would have been just as dramatic, if not more, because like you say, with the sort of billion ships chasing, you kind of think, oh, well, they're going to get out of this one with a large explosion or something's going to knock all these little swarm ships out, and then that'll be it. Whereas if there's 3 sort of heavily armed ships chasing, I don't know if that would have been more tense or less, but it's kind of like once you get beyond that scale, you're like, oh, well, you know, we know they're getting out of this somehow anyway. You know, they're not going to be caught by just one ship, so...
I would agree with that. If that's what they wanted, good threat value, then I think I would definitely want to see something like that. For example, as you say, they've got these 3 ships. Maybe they defeat one of the ships, but it costs them so much, there is clearly no way they can defeat the other 2. So immediately you've got a threat that you believe. I mean, I'm tempted to believe that they weren't actually going for threat because it's Guardians. They want comedy and jokes. So arguably they didn't need a threat value to that scene. But if not, then the humour has to be really top form because the jokes are suddenly the forefront of the scene. And actually, I wasn't laughing at the back and forth between Star-Lord and Rocket. It wasn't brilliant humour. It was all right. But if they don't have the threat value in the scene and they don't have the great comedy in the scene, then there's nothing in that scene. So, yeah, I think you covered it right when you said it. The opening bit, the cold open with the space monster, great, but then doesn't really seem to go anywhere with the rest of the opening.
Yeah, I didn't really mind the space battle. I thought it looked really good, and I did like the gag with the kind of room full of remote controls that just sounded like an 80s arcade machine. I thought that was a good gag, and you know, kind of pointless space battles are a big part of lots of things I watch or have watched, so it didn't really bother me. I thought it was a good way to just open the film with just a bit of a romp, really, and it does. You know, it only exists to get the ship damaged to the point that Ego can find them and take them to the next part of the story anyway.
I found it really funny with the sort of arcade sound effects. I particularly liked when they all gathering around the one guy who's left.
Yeah,
and then as soon as he dies, everyone just goes, "Oh, you're rubbish."
Yeah. He's about to hit the high score. Nope.
Yeah, he's the last one remaining. He managed to survive when all the others died, and then as soon as he dies, they all go, "Oh, you were rubbish."
Oh, he's the last one remaining, other than the other side of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although he was the only one that followed them into the asteroid field or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, there was another like billion of them just, you know, sitting in another room.
Yeah, waiting.
Which was, you know, it was like, all right, okay, they're out of this now. Nope, there's more. Yeah, that. But I think the first one and the second one have that problem of stakes not feeling realistic. I mean, it's not realistic because it's all nonsense anyway. But then, I never believed the stakes in the first one. The fact that they defeat Ronan with essentially a dance-off, which is just, it's not something I could ever get behind. So, the levels of jeopardy in both films don't ever feel as significant as they do in the other Marvel films, even the more comedic ones. Ant-Man's a very funny film, but I believe the jeopardy that was in the final battle, so to speak. Yeah, so once they crash on that planet that just happens to have a breathable atmosphere, thankfully, but it's the Star Trek or Star Wars problem, isn't it? Every planet is somehow capable of supporting all the characters. And you meet Ego for the first time, other than the flashback at the beginning, but you get your first proper introduction to him and the reveal that he's Star-Lord's father. How did that reveal work for you guys? The way they handled it. I quite liked it in the sense that it was kind of quite casually done, and there was that. It was meant to be kind of melodramatic, but the way they poked fun at the kind of melodrama of the situation was all right, I thought.
I think they handled it pretty well. It was, like you say, they sort of went for the melodrama element. It wasn't a surprise because of, you read it on the news that, Kirk's going to be on the film and he's going to be playing Star-Lord's dad, so you kind of know exactly what's coming. So it's not a reveal, if you know what I mean. I was surprised they did it so early in the film. I don't know quite what I was expecting going into it, but yeah, I think they handled it all right with the poking a bit of fun in it and trying to get the stories out of them, and yeah.
I think that I was glad they got straight to it. Actually, I think maybe I wasn't expecting it to be him just to turn up and say, "Who saved us?" Well, your dad did. I'm your dad, mate. I wasn't expecting that to come that quickly, but it almost cuts through a lot of trope and a lot of wasted time because they've got quite a lot to do on Ego himself, his own created world. So I was glad they did get through that. I don't have a great memory for all of the fun things that were had. I remember that there was a campfire scene and they chatted around it. Again, no great humour stands out in my head as I remember lots of jokes that they did when they did the build-up. It felt like it was, let's get this done because we need to get this done. It was reasonable enough, but I'm afraid the farthest I can go with it is it was reasonable enough, and my memory of it is already fading, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I actually don't remember very much about that scene. I just remember it having a bit of a light touch. He casually reveals it, and there's kind of a melodramatic edge to it. But but I liked Ego as a character because there was something kind of very likeable about him in the beginning that kind of made his descent into villainy was inevitable. As soon as you see him sort of with his 3D printed diorama of his life, going from single-celled organism to living planet, it was pretty obvious that wasn't the whole story, and there was more to it. But I kind of wanted to like him throughout, and it's quite late on before there's any work done to establish that he might be up to no good. It's not, you've got this kind of you've got this family dynamic going on between the Guardians anyway, so Gamora's objection could just be the fact that she's a bit jealous, initially anyway.
I think this is the thing about that whole development, that whole plot line, the whole family argument running through it. It feels like it was definitely crafted and somebody's put a lot of effort into trying to make sure that you see a lot of family angles all the way through, but I'm so distracted by other things that I had trouble appreciating this angle. I mean that very opening bit when they go back to the planet and they just leave Rocket and Group to repair the ship. Why did Gamora and Drax go with Quill? Why didn't they need to defend the ship? It was just the whole thing at that opening bit all the way through to when he gets to the planet is just can we just list the things that we need to do to get the characters where we need them, such that we can do all the other funky things we want to do? So I see what you're saying, whether it could have all this meaning and purpose, but because it's not dressed up or got all the points aren't gotten to in any meaningful way, I'm not connected to any of this yet. It doesn't actually mean anything in that same way to me.
Yeah, for me, Rocket staying with the ship made sense because theoretically he's the only guy that knows how to fix it. And then Groot staying with him is probably because Groot wouldn't stay with anyone else.
Yeah, but did you see what Rocket did to fix it? He got the spray gun.
Yeah.
Now, I am totally up for that, because in the future, when you just spray nanobots across your ship and they fix it, that is actually brilliant. Plus, this is a bit more space opera, so you don't want some kind of hard-hitching engineering crew getting into the gritty details and asking for this, that, and the other spanner and so on. You know, you don't want that. But because of that, somebody who's got an engineering qualification or 40 years experience knows how to work the squirty gun. It's just, you know, you don't need to have that meaning behind it. You know, arguably Drax could have held a much bigger squirty gun, and they could have squirted across the ship a lot faster. It doesn't. We can all sort of dig into it, and we can find that meaning in it. But if you're having to sort of build that yourself, then you're distracted, and I was distracted. I was distracted too much to look for the important stuff that I know is what you're talking about, that I know is supposed to be there.
It did lead to one of the most. Sorry, it did lead to one of the most sort of fun little scenes that I quite liked, which was Rocket defending the ship and managing to take out several Ravagers all at once. With all
those little traps, they were good. Yeah,
sort of Home Alone style.
Yeah, it is, and that makes for a good little action sequence. And I can't say that I didn't enjoy that sequence, but getting to it, it feels like they could have almost had that as the opening. Why have they crashed on this planet, and why is Rocket by himself? You know, and then great action opening, but.
Yeah, but I would have liked to see Rocket do some actual mechanical stuff. I'm reminded of The Empire Strikes Back, where, you know, a large part of the plot is them essentially sitting in a cave trying to fix the Millennium Falcon. So you see them doing a lot of mechanical stuff, and then you get a lot of character in there as well, because, well, you see them just, you see them just putting stuff back together and using tools and stuff. But yeah, the whole squirt gun that fixes the ship, that was a bit.
I think
bizarre.
they'd broken the ship too much to have them just sort of sitting there repairing. It wasn't sort of one blown out engine or, you know, one gun that wasn't working. They had lost the whole rear section of the ship. So it's one of those where you're like, you've either got to go down the lines of, yes, we have a mystical squirty gun that can build new ship, or you've got to go and, you know, like we were saying about the beginning, you've got to scale it back to the point where they severe, you know, bad damage from a very swift direct attack from another ship, rather than, you know, they survive several bullets, but then their final bit is getting chopped in half at the end, you know.
Yeah, and splitting up the characters, as you said, Aaron, was definitely a plot point, because you needed to have Rocket in the position that he could come to their rescue when things got tough. Because if all the Guardians were there, then you wouldn't have that opportunity. Yeah,
and that's a shame. It's because the plot needs it is never satisfying for me.
Yeah, well, I did like. I liked how they used Yondu in this film. I liked him in the first film as well. I think he's pretty consistent across both, and I like how they filled in the sort of backstory of he was hired by Ego to bring Peter Quill back, but then he decided not to because a small child can sneak in places.
He's one of the characters that's been the most focus in the film, despite him not sort of officially being one of the Guardians. He's given kind of the most development and the biggest sort of backstory developments, you know, out of all of them, I would say. And I mean, great job playing it with Michael Rooker, but it's I really liked his sort of little subplot of the film. I thought that was great.
He's definitely one of the best parts of it, and that's where the family angle does kick in, and his connection with Rocket is definitely one of the best points of this film. I can't deny it. Even his bit, though, I struggled with slightly when, at the start, we find he's been exiled for child smuggling or whatever it is, and you're thinking, where did that come from? Because the actual offences were committed mostly, 20 years ago, and all of a sudden they've just caught up with him. And I think I actually struggled to follow what was going on there. I didn't realise why he'd been exiled and what the problem was. It needed that filling in for them to say, oh yeah, it was what you've been trafficking kids like the Star-Lord guy. And maybe they had only just found out, but even though it was actually a really good part of it, I did actually kind of miss the point early on. It's almost like I felt like they were catching up, trying to fill in the gaps. How can we turn this guy into a hero? How can we explain his actions in the first film and make it good in the second one? And I think they did a great job when I knew what they were doing. I thought it was a good use of it, but it did take me a while to catch up with it.
Plus, it allowed time for a gratuitous Sylvester Stallone cameo.
Yes. He did what he needed to do. That was fine. It wasn't
around and looked important.
Yeah, exactly. What were you expecting? A big Shakespearean piece? I mean,
well, he could do it. Have you seen Creed?
I have not.
Yeah, you should.
Okay.
Stallone can do both, and his character is in 2 scenes, and one of them's after the credits. So
yes,
yeah, but he's going to be important later, apparently, which is part of the charm and the problem with these films. They'll chuck in seemingly random things and be like, don't worry, we've got a plan for this 4 films later. And I suppose it's a lot of confidence to think that your audience will still be here in 4 films' time or whenever they plan to drop these characters,
Oh, but they've earned that, though. If we're still here since Hulk and Iron Man 1, then we're not going anywhere,
Yeah. I even watched this one, even though I was pretty sure I wouldn't like it.
The thing is, they plant these nuggets, but they don't. If they're doing it well, they're subtle. There's no sort of big signpost above his head saying this character's coming back. So even if another Guardians film never happens, even if you never see the characters again, there's no signpost above the head of that character that says, oh, he's definitely going to be very, very important down the line.
No.
So it's one of those. It doesn't sort of impact too much later.
Yeah. Yeah, Stallone's role was to put Yondu in prison, which then helped his part of the plot, and it all came together. But yeah, I liked how Yondu was done, and his death was quite meaningful as well, I thought.
Well, it fitted exactly what they set up. They set up him as a proper father figure. It's the old line, what was the line? He's your father, but he's not your dad. I mean, they really set that up well, and then they went through it, and it's a believable sacrifice because they do only have one piece of kit, so it wasn't too forced. And so therefore, yeah, I was on board with that. I thought it was a good ending.
He also gets one of the best lines of of I'm Mary Poppins, y'all, which was howl in the cinema. I just thought that was great.
That was a good one. It was just the way he was descending on his little arrow thing. Oh, that was good.
Which it must be the most powerful weapon in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, yeah.
Unless used on Drax.
Yeah, I suppose so. But, oh my god, it's...
Oh, this is slightly painful,
It can go through anything and destroy anything. It's just,
Yeah, it's like main character invincibility, though, isn't it? That kind of problem.
Actually, I think I'd liken it more to the Roger Rabbit principle. If it's funny, then it becomes the truth. So you don't want him to be killed by this, but you do want him to be hit by it in a comic way. Therefore, It cannot kill him at that point, because if it did, it would not be funny.
Yeah. I actually think Drax was my favourite part of this film anyway. I think...
Really?
Yeah. Wow. I don't know. I just quite like how dry the character is and how brutally honest he is. And he's a champion for autism. A lot of autistic fans are warming up to him because it's kind of Well, they're maybe not intended to portray him that way, but it's kind of this. He says exactly what he thinks and isn't aware that it might offend people and all this stuff. So people are kind of looking at that as a bit of representation. So that's positive.
It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting you should put it that way, though, because I found him to be that way in the first film, but in the second film, I found him to be crueler. And in the first film, he would say something, and it would not fit the circumstance, and there was an innocence to it that I think, if you're really going down the autism connection, the innocence is important because clearly nobody is trying to do something. Whereas in the second film, he is a bully. He is brutal, and he says things that are guaranteed to hurt. Now, I think the difference is in the first film, he accidentally hurts because it's not every single thing he says. Where in the second film, pretty much every line he's given is designed to hurt somebody else. So it's not the character doing it, it's definitely the writing. But it's one of those things where they say something's become a stereotype of itself because he was always hurtful in everything he said. It wasn't this random nature of this might hurt you, it might not, I'm not in control. It was definitely no, we're going to make jokes out of this. Let's make him a brutal, evil bully. Everything he says is going to be awful. And I stopped finding it funny because it was so cruel. And it's supposed to be a bit of fun, and I'm definitely taking it too seriously by thinking of it that way. But it was just that repetitive nature of the brutality that eventually turned me off, actually, in the way that the first film didn't. The first film just had that greater innocence to it.
The first film did have him sort of misunderstanding people's jokes and plays on words, rather than sort of saying hurtful things and not realising he was saying hurtful things. Whereas this does, I found him funny. I found him a bit like Craig. I found him one of the better of the Guardians characters in this film because he's one that gets a bit of focus. But I do see your point about how if you know, the way the rules of the character work, it did seem more like a bullying kind of thing towards Mantis than a funny thing. I do get that, but
it's not even just Mantis. It's Star-Lord. It's pretty much everyone. I think I would have found it funnier if they'd have just sprinkled more of him, as you say from the first film, misunderstanding everybody else. Because in this film, he understands everybody else perfectly, but then strangely can't reverse that empathy to see how they are misunderstanding him. So they weren't clever enough with it for me. They didn't carry on enough with what they'd set up.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that most of his scenes were with Mantis. So, you know, he was only ever one way with her because he genuinely thought she looked hideous, I suppose. But and her kind of lack of social skills helped, meant that she wasn't particularly bothered by it either. But I found it interesting how that he doesn't, you know, he's not saying those things to be hurtful. He's saying those things just because that's what he thinks, but he doesn't hold that against her.
Well, take the Star-Lord one then, where his Mantis reveals something about Star-Lord's emotions, and Drax's response is, "That must be so awful for you. You must feel so awful right now." And the thing about that joke is, he's expressed empathy. He knows exactly how Star-Lord feels, and he is finding it hilariously funny. So that is not that autistic connection where the person is failing to draw an understanding. That's somebody who knows exactly what's going on and is finding it ridiculously funny. So that is definitely the behaviour of a bully, not somebody who doesn't understand.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that bit, although Drax is a bit of a... Well, he's been a brutal killer, you know, for years now.
But he's had that in the first thing. He's had a certain honesty to that. He wanted revenge. He's not somebody who has enjoyed killing everybody he's met. He certainly wants to vent his frustrations, but in the first film, his anger was directed specifically at the person who had killed his family. Now, revenge is something that is usually counterbalanced in a plot where the person cannot cruelly murder even in revenge. And they do that in the first film, where he tries to get his revenge and he fails. Whereas I don't think that sort of balance was carried over into the second film. He does seem more like he just enjoys hurting, which I don't think was set up before.
Yeah, maybe not. Although, I mean, I don't remember the first film that well. I do remember Drax being probably the thing I liked most about it, and I liked him in this one as well. I thought he was one of the stronger elements of it, and I did quite like Mantis as well. She, it's a weird reference, but she reminded me a bit of I forget the character's name, but the female character in Tron Legacy. It was that same idea where she'd been kind of created out of nothing and just and just kind of moulded with only one person to show her how things work. And Ego's probably not the best role model because he's a maniacal living planet.
Unfortunately, that's another thing where I feel like it was a perfectly reasonable idea, but the presentation didn't work for me, because when we're first introduced to her, she says, "I have been raised by myself and just this person to teach me. Therefore, I do not understand social interaction and have trouble understanding what you mean." And you're thinking, so hang on a minute, you're actually fully conscious of all these social things that you don't understand, well enough to explain it, but not enough to actually then start picking it up. And I think that was just an epitome of I think that just describes her introduction to me when they're on the ship talking to her for the first time. It's pure exposition. She just tells you what you need to know for the character, and that could have been a screen. That could have been just in the screenplay that we could have just read. They could have handed that document out. Here's what you need to know before you start about this character. It's that thing that you'd say to me, show, don't tell. She just told us who she was, but me, that needed to break character. I think once you got into it, she was fine. And I get your description of what she should have been, but it's just that setup. Again, the setup didn't work for me.
Fair enough.
She was sort of an exposition giver.
Yes.
I was trying to work out. It was sort of why did they put that character there? But they needed an impartial person who had been with Ego in order to reveal plot details.
Yes.
He needed to have an assistant or a robotic helper or something that would let words slip, so that people go, "Oh, hang on, there's something not quite right here. There's something definitely fishy about this guy on a planet by himself."
Yes.
It was like that was the reason. She had the fun scene is the one that was kind of not spoilt in the trailer. It was good to put it in there for fun, but the sort of being able to feel people's thoughts and explain them. That scene was good fun. But for the rest of it, she was kind of forgettable for me. I can't remember many things. I can remember more of what Drax said to her in those funny moments, rather than anything that she particularly did.
Yeah, and most of her scenes were around building that kind of friendship with Drax, where he'd just make fun of her and she'd sit there and take it. But eventually it gets to, and I did quite like the payoff where Drax said that she was, I think he uses the word beautiful, but then qualifies it with on the inside.
It was one of those things. It was like to pair the two of them up. He doesn't understand why people would be offended at what he's saying. She doesn't understand that she should be offended by what he said.
Yeah. And
that's meant to be the pairing, but you as the audience understand why both of them should be upset right now. I guess that was the sort of comedy element of that. But
yeah, I was probably overthinking it then by that point, though, because all I could think about when she was on screen together with Drax to that point was you have the ability to sense and feel any emotion, and yet you claim to have no real understanding of people's existence. It feels like even if she couldn't have put it into words, her being so clueless about it didn't really seem to fit with what they said she could do. Plus, if she'd not met any other people, who on earth had she been practicing this feeling sensation, and how could she possibly have interpreted anything she was feeling if she'd never encountered any of them before? I think the character was full of too many things that didn't match for me to really believe that she was in any way real.
Well, she must have interacted with... Well, Ego's the obvious one. She would touch him every day to send him to sleep. But she must have also interacted with all of his children that he kept bringing back.
I think in that case, I would have expected that person to have been very good with emotions and working out what people were thinking. Even if she couldn't have expressed it in words, it feels like she should have been very knowledgeable of things like joy at discovering somebody, and fear at realizing that the father was about to kill them. And the interaction she'd have had with those people would have then undermined this statement that I have not met anybody and I do not know what social interaction is because I have not spent any time with other people, which she's very clear on at the start. So either she has never felt Ego's real emotions when she's touched him and has never touched any of his kids, or she has and has somehow managed to do that without learning anything from it at all. I think the whole character it feels like it's a reasonable idea, but the more I think about it, the more flaws I find in her.
That was quite a dodgy statement, talking about touching Ego's kids. I just thought I'd throw that out.
Okay.
Not as dodgy as what Ego did to them afterwards.
Well, that's true. Yeah. And that whole... Yeah, that plot around... Once it was revealed that he was kind of looking for... Well, not kind of. He was definitely looking for an heir. So he impregnated women across the universe to try and find someone to share his power so that he could destroy the universe? Oh, no. It was turn the universe into him. Yeah.
Extend himself slightly. Yeah.
Which kind of feels a bit like a Doctor Who season finale plot, actually. Come to think of it. You know, those kind of stakes are unimaginable. And the large stake stuff, I mean, we're all used to it now. You know, how many summer Marvel films or any other films have we seen where the entire Earth is in jeopardy? But this is literally the entire universe, you know, and it's weird. It's weird that the film is so casual about it, I suppose.
I think if they went too far with it, they would lose the comedy element. I think this film goes for the funnies in a way, and it's one of those ones that if you sit there and go, oh my god, look at the stakes, then it would stop being funny. You wouldn't accept the joking around that then happens afterwards. It does seem like a grand plan, like beyond what you've seen in many of the films. Like you say, it's normally, oh, this planet is in jeopardy, or this character's in jeopardy, or that's it. But this is, he's trying to terraform, for want of a better word, umpteen planets all at once. I'm presuming hundreds or thousands, or the whole lot that he's visited. You know, every inhabited world he could get his hands on.
Yeah. It's by that token, if they're not going to take those level of stakes seriously, then the entire thing could have been a bit smaller. You know, it didn't have to grow to that extent, especially since the focus was on reuniting a family, essentially. Ego could have been enough of a threat to that on his own, without without him putting in peril every planet he'd ever seeded.
But it just seems at the time, especially when you're sort of seeing the shots, it's basically like a big blob that's just kind of expanding. Yeah. And it seems a bit like... I'm trying to find the right words to describe it, but you know, Star-Lord's or Peter Quill's response to it seems to be, I'm all right up to a point, until he says he gave his mum cancer, at which point he's then peeved off. But up to the point where, Ego's sitting there going, and I think everyone should be like me, the whole thing should be controlled by me because I've been here the longest, so there, kind of thing. He seems to be going along with that all right. They're not particularly putting up much of a, what the hell are you talking about, up until that point,
Yeah, and the idea seems to be that he's somewhat overwhelmed by the whole experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I did quite like how the father-son dynamic developed throughout the film. They did the really stupid thing like playing catch with a ball of light that was a bit weird.
It was pointless.
Well, it was just the idea that he'd never had that, and it's a very typical Earth thing, to as a father-son bonding ritual, and certainly the United States, I suppose. But so it was that kind of, he's finally getting to play catch with the old man.
I think it was to parody all that, wasn't it,
Yeah.
really? It was an over-the-top way of doing it, yeah.
Yeah, it did look stupid. But, there was other good stuff about it. I always kind of like these, you're a part of something much larger than yourself kind of conversations. And I quite like the whole, there's a light in the middle of this planet, and you can learn to control it and all that stuff. It's kind of the humble beginnings, supremely powerful thing, and then ultimately he chooses to give up that power, which is, a bit of a heroic thing, I suppose.
Well, it's something that he had never had, or he didn't know he had in the first place. So I don't particularly see him as him giving it up or turning down, more sort of turning down the opportunity to have it. But the character was never going to keep it, knowing that all these planets have had to be converted in order for him to have that power. Or was he even going to have that in the first place? Because it seems that he was just going to be used as a conduit or a battery.
Well, he got to tap into it. He made Pac-Man.
Process, He got to be Pac-Man only when he was fighting at the end. The impression I got was that he was basically just going to be used up in order to terraform the other planets.
Yeah, it wasn't clear whether they were going to work in unison or whether he was going to get drained. But I don't know. It's again, it was just too large for what they were trying to get at. I think Ego's plan could have been something a bit more. If it just had been drain him to sustain himself, then that might have been enough. But the whole the whole I gave your mother cancer so that you could be taken off world thing was very kind of that was a bit of a gut punch, and that was far more effective than I'm threatening the entire universe right now.
Yeah, I kind of think I wish they'd went along that line rather than we've created some galaxy, so we can have they're guarding the galaxy again, of thing at the end, rather than it being just save yourself from being turned into a battery and then prevent this from happening to others, sort of plot.
Yeah,
I suppose the grand revelation is the line that we've talked about already. The sort of Yandu thing of he was your father but I was your dad kind of thing. That was meant to be the revelation by them with that. My issue with that plot is kind of I have an issue with that, and then have an issue with all the tiny little sub-bits that seem to come off, and I still don't quite understand the massive battery chase across the universe. It just that bit kind of just acted as a weird distraction for me. I thought that was something that would be resolved a lot quicker, and it's still unresolved by the end. It's just like a random annoyance that pops up. It's great seeing the sort of over-the-top nature of the... I don't even know what to call the sort of empire that they're part of, showing my ignorance of the of the material. But that kind of wound me up a little bit through it. It seemed that there were too many threads in this, whereas with the first Guardians film, you're like, that's the villain. That's the villain that's going to just, he sets out from the beginning wanting to wipe out this planet. And by the end, what's he doing? He's trying to wipe out the planet. Whereas with this, we've got one group of people that are running about after a set of batteries that have been nicked. and another villain who's wanting to destroy the galaxy and create it again in his image.
Yeah. Well, the batteries only really existed so they could use them to blow him up at the end. You know, that was their ultimate purpose. You know, it took 2.25 hours to get there, but they eventually did it. You know, it just so happens we've got these high-powered explosives that we talked about that are more powerful than a sun or whatever it is, you know. And then, so it kind of plants that seed that then pays off at the end of the film. It's like, if only we had something that could destroy this planet-sized being. It's like, oh wait, we do. Yeah, I did like that they retained Ego's comic book origins. I was worried about that in the beginning when he was just a guy, and I was like, well, this is just a guy called Ego. But then, especially when you get the shot of the planet with his face and stuff, I was like,
sort
yeah,
of the
that's
other
cool.
side.
Yeah, I always liked Ego, the Living Planet, when he would appear in things like Silver Surfer comics and so on, and it's because he's just this weird being that, you know, that's, I guess, LSD in the 70s could only come up with, but he's just, it's such a cool villain, and apparently Marvel managed to get the rights to him because they had to apply to change some other mutants. Fox had to apply to change some other mutants' powers, and in exchange they managed to get Ego back. So, you know, all these little legal jumbles that go on. What about the other characters? I mean, like Gamora had this whole bonding with her sister arc, and you know, I honestly couldn't really be arsed with that because there was nothing there to begin with. You know, you never got the sense in the first film that they were especially close. They just happened to be sisters because they were raised by the same person, but other than fighting each other, they didn't really do or say anything.
Nebula got the better development out of that relationship. I think Gamora was probably one of the most underserved of the Guardians in this. You know, she didn't get very much, but Nebula gets the development where she tries to get her revenge, she gets over it. You know, and now she's going off sort of to get more revenge, but not against the Guardians. And I suppose we're going to see her in a future, you know, in the future film again. You know, she sort of gets a little bit of redemption. But Gamora, I kind of felt that she didn't get served very well. She was more sort of a target of affection for Star-Lord again, and that didn't seem to go well. I mean, even Peter Quill and Star-Lord doesn't get that much in the film. I think he was probably on the screen less than Yondu was.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Even though his arc is essentially the core of the film.
It's part of the core of the film, because you sort of disappear off to see Rocket and Groot and Nebula, and you're shooting about all that. You don't, overall, when I came out, I thought I didn't see much from that character, and the character didn't pop as much for me as it did in the first film.
Yeah. No,
I don't know how to put my finger on it, to be honest, for the thing, but I was a little bit disappointed. I think that's one of the reasons that I'm a little bit disappointed in this.
Yeah, I don't feel that Star-Lord was changed that much by his experiences, even though he was. You know, he sort of realised where his real family was, and then it's that don't meet your heroes kind of mentality, isn't it? You know, he meets his father and then realises that it's not what he hoped or wanted from that relationship, and then realises he actually had what he wanted all along but hadn't realised it. In terms of Nebula, I agree with you that she's better served than Gamora is, but and I especially like the whole talk about Thanos being a kind of brutal father figure, you know, as in every time Nebula and Gamora would fight, she would lose, and then she would be upgraded by some mechanical means each time to try and make her better, and it just would make her worse, you know. But that is actually the biggest bit of characterization we've ever had for Thanos, and he isn't even there.
Yeah, I mean, but it sounds exactly like how he would work. You know, you lose an arm to improve. You know, your arm gets damaged. You know, it gets replaced, and she was losing every single time. You know, you can imagine how you would then resent the other sister or the other competitor.
Yeah, and all she wanted was affection. That was it.
All she needed was a hug.
Yeah. Aaron, what did you think of Gamora and Nebula?
Well, I can see that they were supposed to be direct parallel or alternate to Yondu, in that Nebula was another misunderstood character, like Yondu was misunderstood, and if only we got to know our family better, we would forgive them what we think are their trespasses. But the difficulty probably was because the two stories were entirely separate and didn't seem to connect to each other. I think that made it difficult to really get some real feeling out of the two women's stories. As Chris said, they didn't really hit as hard as the other one. Maybe if they'd wound them in together somehow and not had them so separate, because they were both of them are effectively along to fight and then watch the other people do their job or get their development, as Chris says. So it's another one of those things that it was fine, but possibly lacked the punch.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it was to do with the lack of prior development of their relationship. I don't remember I mean, again, I haven't seen the first film that many times, but I don't remember anything major about their sisterhood and played with in the first film at all. So it kind of comes out of nowhere, almost comes out of nowhere here, even though the first film did have Thanos, so there was a good opportunity to show what he was like as a father figure to these two people.
It reminded me of TV shows, actually, where each episode of a 22-part season has a theme, and every single character encounters that theme in their own fashion as relevant to their previous development. And these two had a sister, so if there was going to be a TV show given over to family, clearly those two had to deal with their sisterhood, because that's the strong family element in their lives. So it's almost like it was there because it was the theme, and maybe that was it. Yeah,
and it needed to be dealt with because you can't have them in a room together without talking about the fact that they were raised together. And their teaming up was okay. You know, it was. Again, it furthered the plot along because it showed us Ego's little cave of corpses, which was pretty bizarre. So it got us to the point where, oh my god, Gamora was right to not trust Ego, you know, but which obviously we all saw coming, I would imagine.
Yes.
Yeah.
It kind of, when you then reverse back a bit, it then makes it hard to forgive Yondu. Despite the fact he gets his redemption moment and everything, you're looking at a pile of corpses that he delivered. You know, it's some of this film, when you peel back the jokey veneer, is dark, is proper dark and brutal.
Yeah.
That's what he got chucked out the Ravagers for. Essentially, was delivering all these kids to Ego, who was, going, do you have the gift? No, you don't. Okay, go on. Next. It was, that's all that was happening there. That's where that pile of corpses comes from, yeah?
Is it pointed out that he knows what goes on when he delivers them? Or
yeah, that's why he saves Star-Lord, because he knows what the fate is, so he chooses to keep him alive.
Yeah, so he's just kind of ignoring the fact that, he's delivering these kids to be tested, then slaughtered.
I mean, that's a pretty large pile of bodies.
You have to wonder how a living planet couldn't simply just expel them into outer space or something.
After the 200th child, does he not ask the question? It's like when you sort of take the veneer off, you kind of go, oh, that's dark. That's, I mean, there's a lot of comedy and jokes around the film, but then you sort of go, ooh. I mean,
although Yondu wouldn't have done them all, would he? I mean, I would imagine.
No, well, you're presuming not, but at the same time, you're still going. It's still dark, in a film which is a lot of light-hearted and a lot of banter and things going about, you still think, oh, what the hell? I mean,
a lot of Drax jokes are about murdering people, so that's,
true. And, the sort of retaking of the Ravager ship is another one of those where the floaty Space Needle manages to
lots of people die.
Massacre a lot of people, though it's all done over jaunty music, so that's okay.
With Groot cutting about, smiling, and
yeah, it's got Baby Groot in it. Cute Baby Groot. Lots of people dying. Cute Baby Groot. There we go. It's another one of those ones where I know there was a lot of murder and things in the first film, but I don't think I noticed the death toll as much for some reason. I don't know what particularly raised my attention to it this time. But yeah, it's one of those things that I sort of left going, ooh, there was a high body count by the end of this.
Yeah, I think you've done it. You've described it already. Actually, that's in the first film. There's no need to consider two different things in the same person. The pirates are pirates. They're awful because to be a pirate, you have to be awful. Whereas in the second film, we're asked to believe that the lead pirate, who keeps all these people together by his sheer brutality, is actually just a softy at heart who wishes he could be a dad. And you're thinking, wait, do those two things actually ever come together? And you're asked to compare them. So I think your mind was drawn to it because you're trying to think of this guy having those two faces at once, and it doesn't work, possibly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a strange one. I mean, I remember being quite shocked by that scene as well. I was like, he's killed a lot of people, and they're not just like anonymous people, they're like his people. They're like fellow Ravagers. Even though he's been kind of excommunicated, he must still know these people pretty well.
What I didn't understand is why they needed to like clear out the entire ship pretty much before blowing it up.
Yeah.
Even if they had sort of detached the front pod and set the auto-destruct on the other half, I would have almost accepted it more than the fact that they basically kill everything and then blow up the ship at the end,
Yeah, or fire the needle through their legs to incapacitate them or something,
Oh, you've got to incapacitate the guards to get out. You can then set the auto-destruct and separate the front, and it almost, you would not let them away with it completely, but you're not quite seeing it done to jaunty music.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a strange one. But, there are a lot of tonal inconsistencies, but I had that problem in the first one. I don't know, it just bothered me less in this one for some reason. So we've talked a lot about Baby Groot here and there, but is he a character? I'm inclined to say no, because he's just kind of there to... I mean, it's the same gag throughout, as in, he's a baby and doesn't understand stuff. Doesn't actually understand how to follow instructions, and then it ends up creating a source of tension at the end, where it's, if you press this button, we have time to escape. You press this button, we die instantly. And that's the kind of the build-up to that gag.
That's another one of those great gags that was not spoiled, but you kind of knew it was coming from the trailer.
I kind of knew it was coming from the point where he just wouldn't listen to Rocket. The first time I was like, this is going to be a source of tension later. I mean, it wasn't really. I mean, but,
It was. I know you don't watch trailers very often, but that was kind of another one of those gags that was in the trailer. I liked it. He was a character. He wasn't, obviously he's I am Groot, and that's all you get vocal-wise. But it's, I still liked the character. I still thought it was a bit of fun. It was something different. You saw, Groot in the first film was the utility Groot. You needed lights. Groot had lights. You needed to get up to a tall thing. He was a stepladder. It's, he was the utility belt, the sort of Batman utility belt where you need something, it's on the utility belt. Whereas it was good to sort of take that away from them in this film. Yeah, and
I think that, while he was essentially the Deus Ex Groot, as I think I called him in my first review of the first one, you could tell what he thought of people, or what his relationship was to people. But with Baby Groot, there wasn't really any of that. He would just he would just decide whose shoulder he was going to sit on in that scene.
I think you're asking quite a lot there from him to be able to perform Shakespeare in his current setup. And it's a bit harsh to downgrade him as not a character. I mean, arguably he had the role of mascot that might have been given over to a character's pet in some other film or TV show, but he was one of the best things in it. He gave us a lot of laughs. There was never a scene where you were bored to watch him. And despite the fact that he wasn't capable of expressing detailed empathy, I think there's two other characters on there who were much less interesting to me that you could also accuse that of.
Yeah, I mean, I did like Baby Groot. Don't get me wrong. I thought he was used well throughout. And was some of the few times that I did laugh, it was mostly at him. But I still wouldn't quite call him a character because he doesn't really have anything to him other than the fact he's an infant that doesn't understand anything. But I would have quite liked to see him sort of, maybe he's more comfortable around Rocket, maybe he doesn't want to be anywhere near Drax, and things like that. I mean, you could have done something with that, I think.
I don't think it was needed. I can't honestly see that he was any less developed than the single sledgehammer force that was Drax and the simple fine instrument that was Mantis. No, Baby Groot was no less developed than those two.
I thought he was a fun character. I just really liked it. Like you say, he was treated as like a pet character would have been in another film. But I think you still got a performance out of it. You still got an idea of who the character liked and didn't like in a way. When you see how he was treated by the Ravagers, for example, you still get emotion there. He still would choose who he was going to sit with or who he was going to let carry him. Or, you still sort of saw that a little bit. So I think the character was okay, and he sort of deployed very well. They didn't overuse him, which I think was a risk with this, considering how many people came out the other side of the first Guardians film and wanted a dancing Groot. They could have really overused him in this, and I think they managed to keep him back a little bit.
I think teenage Groot's going to be pretty infuriating.
I don't know how much of teenage Groot we'll see.
He's got to be the one that's in Avengers, right?
I think we've seen. I think we've seen teenage Groot. I think we'll end up on semi-adult Groot by the next one.
Yeah. Okay, so on to action scenes. I mean, we've talked a little bit about them. Was there any that stood out or didn't stand out? I mean, we've talked at length about the opening one. I quite liked it. Aaron didn't. Chris, you were quite on the fence slightly. What about other action sequences? We've talked about the brutal murder sequence. Other ones, any stand out or in a good or bad way?
Well, we liked Rocket's scene, and we liked the opening scene. They were probably some of the better ones.
Definitely got to have Rocket's. Rocket's defending the ship scene was brilliant. Just firing the Ravagers into the air, seeing all the different groups getting flung up at different times from the sort of wide shot was excellent. Loved that. The fight at the end, the big fight, was funny, and I think served its purpose. It was good. It was sort of good to see.
Yeah, I liked elements of the end fight. The Pac-Man bit was quite good, and it was a payoff from an earlier reference. And the tape joke, that was quite funny.
That's the best part of the whole film, the tape joke.
Yeah, Drax said, will Scotch tape do? Yes, he doesn't have any, that kind of stuff. No. It's,
they sort of keep the camera at that angle for just the right amount of time with that. Yeah. You're seeing Rocket as the voice in the background as he's going around every character going, have you got tape? Have you got
Yeah,
it?
it's Star-Lord that's going around asking people, and Rocket's standing there with Groot, but yeah.
It's an interesting part of the comedic writing, I think, because there's a certain cleverness to it. It's actually fast done well. I think there's a lot of other parts of the film where there is a single joke that's supposed to be a one-liner. A lot of them they're not built up, they're not in context. Whether you laugh or not really is whether you find that particular pun or circumstance funny in and of itself. Where all of a sudden that's compared to this tape joke at the end, which is in context of the situation, is utterly ridiculous based on what they're actually trying to do, but still somehow has very important meaning in the plot. It was such a standout joke to me, just because it was so well crafted, as I say, compared to the rest, which were sometimes funny. Don't get me wrong, I did actually find some of the one-liners funny, but they were one-liners. They weren't as crafted.
Yeah, the thing that bothered me the most about the end action sequence is they were fighting a planet, and at no point did Ego just decide to just crush them all. Which he could have done.
I don't know if he had manipulation at that kind of level.
Well, he obviously did.
You had Mantis for a good period was keeping him asleep, or keeping the heart of the planet asleep. That was the impression that you were getting.
Yeah, but
so I don't know how.
There was sort of before and after that point, though. I think he obviously was able to control every molecule of his own existence. So I think. I think just dropping a mountain on them would have been easy enough.
I think it's the same kind of reason that you get with Ronan in the first film doesn't just put the staff to the ground.
Yeah.
It's it would be a game over.
Yeah.
Game over element. So you've got to leave them to it.
Yeah, I was enjoying enough of the action sequence to not let it bother me too much, but I kept thinking, why doesn't he just crush them? This could be over in like 5 seconds. But then there'd be no film left. But, I guess that's the problem when you create a supremely powerful character like that, and, well, they didn't bother limiting his power other than he just decided not to use it, I suppose.
But it's I think we've said, I know I definitely have in a couple of podcasts in the past, is when your villain gets made so powerful that you've got to come up with an excuse to limit them by the end. You build them up to be this undefeatable creature, monster, villain that no one can get near. He can take out enemies with a single blow, and then at the end he gets, he's got to get taken down somehow. So, writers sometimes can paint themselves into a bit of a corner with that, and I suppose they just, in this case, they ignore it because they just don't get him to use his power.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what it is. Was there any other action sequences? I can't really think of any. I think that was it, wasn't it? I mean, Nebula and Gamora had a brief fight, I suppose. I don't know.
It's still a very well choreographed fight, though.
I barely remember it, so I'll take your word on that one. I imagine it probably was. Aaron, can you remember any others?
I think we've done them all in other segments. Actually, I think we've sort of ticked them all off.
Yeah. So obviously, this is a Marvel film, and Marvel films, they link to each other. So that could be our next segment, and this one really doesn't link to any of the other ones. Strangely, there's no mention of Infinity Stones. Thanos is only mentioned. Earth doesn't have any cameos from random Avengers characters.
I think this is the light break before the storm, to be honest. I think James Gunn's been given a really good thing by Marvel to create this little galaxy away from the other that they can sort of play about with. He seems to get a lot of free reign with it, but yeah, I think they've stuck away from throwing too many Infinity Stones and Thanoses in.
Yeah,
because if they do that, your next one is for Ragnarok. You've then got your
Spider-Man's next, actually.
Is it Spider-Man next? Sorry, yeah. Spider-Man next, and then Thor, and then all the others start piling in at the back, and I'm guessing things are going to get Infinity Stone heavy again, and possibly giving people a sort of break without it is a good idea.
Yeah, although the Earth part, where it was, I forget where Star-Lord originally comes from on Earth, but when that big blob attacks the town, I was expecting War Machine to fly in or something.
Yeah, for you to see someone trying to combat it, or I don't know. I suppose there isn't really a shield, or is there still a shield at the moment? I don't know if you'd expect them to sort of pull up in a van, some sort of shield van to be pulled up, looking at it at the end. I don't know. Yeah,
although if largely the Marvel films are set roughly in real time, so the year they come out, it tends to be the year they're set. This one's unique in the sense that it's only set 3 months after the last one, which, if you presume that was set in real time, so that'd be like 2014, that was just before. Well, it was the last film before Age of Ultron came out, and it's weird that this kind of growth that wiped out a town wasn't mentioned at any point after that.
I don't know if they were planning. The thing is that they probably didn't know that far ahead.
They just came up. Yeah, they just came up with it. Yeah, but
it's one that they've just come up with. I think you would have expected maybe a shield van to pull up or someone to try and combat it, but maybe they were just trying to keep it something alone and something separate and simple. They just had a big blob enveloping people, and that that kept it nice and easy. Whereas to throw something else in there, you
could have almost not had Earth appear at all in that sense, but I don't know. It's just weird. Maybe it'll be retroactively mentioned. That'll be like that thing 3 years ago, and there'll be a picture of it in the background. Or when the Avengers meet the Guardians of the Galaxy next year, it'll be so this was to do with you, that kind of something like that will be mentioned. I would imagine.
This quarantined blob area.
Yeah. No, so it's all your fault, is it? Oh dear. Yeah. Although there is one kind of, I would say one reference that filters through all of the, not just Marvel Cinematic Universe films, but almost every Marvel film ever made, is the bit where Stan Lee's sitting on an asteroid talking to a bunch of bald people. Those characters are what they call the Watchers, and there's variations of them in other types of things like Fringe and so on, but essentially they keep an eye on all the pivotal events that happen without interfering in them. So there's been a fan theory cutting about for years that Stan Lee is that character. That's why he's in every film, no matter where it's set or when it's set. And it's a silly theory, and it has no impact one way or another. But his appearance in this film pretty much confirms that he's one of them. And I don't like that they've confirmed it, to be honest. I like to speculate rather than know sometimes.
Well, I like that he's played a bit of service to the fan theory, you know what I mean? I kind of think that's him doing one for the fans and a cheeky little wink to camera. James Gunn-wise, because he seems to be someone that sort of reads a lot of what the fans are saying and is a fan himself. So, yeah, I guess that's what that's for, really.
But then now every subsequent appearance is going to be like, oh, there's the Watcher again, rather than, oh, look at Stanley. But, it'll be the same thing, but...
I think there'll be a large section that don't even know. They just go, that's the guy that appears in all these films.
Yeah. It's like, tell me who the space jockey is.
It's the cameo guy.
It's the cameo guy, yeah. The king of cameos.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is one other sort of cameo. You see Jeff Goldblum's picture in the credits. He does a bit of a dance. He's going to be in... I
didn't notice that was him, actually.
Yeah. I thought it was him, but I wasn't sure at the time, and then I read it afterwards, and it was like, yeah, that's him.
I've got, I really like the credits, the sort of dancing, silly credits, and the music with David Hasselhoff in. I just thought that was great.
Yeah.
It's the first time in ages that I haven't mind sitting through the credits between the numerous post-credit stings, the cheesy music and the funny dancing and stuff going on. I just really enjoyed it.
In terms of the post-credit stuff, do you think this one was overkill? Do you think 5 is too many?
Yeah, 5 is too many, but they weren't... The post-credit stings that we're used to seeing normally sort of advance something in the story. They do normally get one that advances something in the story and another one that's like a jokey, teasery thing. You know, it's normally a joke scene or a thing. With this, it all just seemed a bit... A few disjointed random ones. You obviously get the pod scene.
Yeah, that's the definite story furthering one.
Which I think is like which is
Adam
the
Warlock.
story further on, and then the rest, you get the jokey one with Groot, teenage Groot. I suppose that's what that one's supposed to be, and the rest are all,
Yeah, what are even the other? There's the Sylvester Stallone puts together his own team of Guardians of the Galaxy, who are made up with some characters that were in it originally. The original team in the comics. Some of them, I don't think all of them, but I can't really remember those characters that well. What else? So there was that. There was Teen Groot. There was Adam Warlock.
Stan Lee getting left behind.
Stan Lee getting left behind. Yeah, that was the last one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh well. Yeah. Aaron, thoughts on post-credit scenes? 5 too many, or?
Yeah, too many jokes. Oh, they were all jokes. They fitted the rest of the film, though, didn't it? Where they didn't really need to. They didn't really want to connect into the other Marvel films. They just wanted to give you a fun little finish.
Yeah.
But
3 of them were jokes. 2 of them were semi-serious.
Yeah.
The Adam Warlock one, there's nothing funny about that. And the Stallone one isn't that funny either.
I suppose technically, yeah. I suppose they must link into films coming then, I guess.
Yeah. The other 3 though, Teenage Groot, where you had Star-Lord acting like a parent who, whose child wouldn't listen to him. That was the joke there. Stan Lee getting left behind. Yeah. Yeah, 5 is too many though. I think with Spider-Man we'll have a more sensible 2.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of overkill. I mean, it was fun. It kind of fitted, like you were saying, it kind of fitted with the theme of the film. It was a bit of fun, and they just sort of threw. It was almost like extra jokes that they couldn't fit in during the film. So thought, let's put them in the credits thing. We don't have space for this elsewhere, so let's put it here.
Yeah, we can't put these in organically as part of the plot, so let's just chuck it in randomly.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was other little sort of other Marvel references throughout the film as well. You saw Howard the Duck kicking about. He was sitting in a bar or something like that.
Yeah, you had Cosmo at one point as well, didn't you?
Yeah, somewhere. The dog, yeah. Yeah, it's not really a Marvel reference, but a David Hasselhoff cameo that was pretty random.
Oh, I liked that. I thought that was a great joke.
Yeah.
If you can get David Hasselhoff for 5 seconds into your movie, then why not?
Well, I'm pretty sure we could get him on this podcast for 5 seconds if we really tried.
Okay, you're on. Next podcast. Craig, the challenge accepted. Off you go, Craig.
Oh, no. Yeah. I can
want
just edit this out and it's never happened.
Yeah, no, this happened. This definitely happened. I'm now going to mention it so many times before the end of this podcast, you'll never edit them all out in time.
Just watch me. No, it's one of those, he's not the... he's not the big box office draw. I don't know if he ever was, but he's not as popular as he once was. So it's kind of, he does show up in a lot of these novelty roles, doesn't he?
Maybe after you've got him on this podcast, he'll be more sought after.
Maybe that's it.
You say that to him when he's on this podcast.
Neil Before Pod is the is the first stage of his comeback tour. Although he's popular in Germany, people like his music in Germany. So there. I think I don't have much else to say on the film. Should wrap up now, I suppose. I liked it a lot better than I liked the first one, although I haven't had a burning desire to watch it again. But I'm also not against the idea of watching it again at some point in the future. I thought it was long the first time I watched it, the only time I watched it. So I feel like watching it again would only make it feel longer. You know, the slow scenes would be even slower because I'm not experiencing it for the first time. So
I'd like to see it again. I mean, the first Guardians film is one of my favourites, which I think is why I was a little disappointed. I still really, really enjoyed it. Just didn't hit the same spot that the first one did for me. I still found it funny, but where the other one is a film that I will go to every once in a while, I don't know if this would be the same. After seeing the first Guardians film, I wanted to go in and see it again instantly, whereas with this, I'm not too sure.
Fair enough. Aaron, final thoughts, wrap-up thoughts?
Probably the same as Chris, although even slightly more extremer reaction, because if I never saw this one again, I wouldn't be bothered. If it came on, I could enjoy a few of the gags that I enjoyed, probably mostly around the tape joke and Baby Groot, but yeah, I wouldn't be too worried if I didn't see it. There's too much reliance on one-liner gags, which I didn't think the first film suffered from that. So yeah, I really enjoyed the first film, and that's the one I will be looking out for in the future. Number one, not number two.
Did anyone ever think that I would be the one saying, yeah, I quite like this one, and other people might have been like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked it. It's just I didn't like it as much as the first film. And as I always say to these podcasts, when you've got your critical head on, you find faults rather than finding praise a lot of the time. But I just didn't find it as go-to and as instantly likeable as the first one. I think I went in with such high expectations that when I was disappointed, it kind of burst the bubble a little bit for me.
Maybe that's the key, you know. Aaron, did you have high expectations, or were you just kind of waiting and seeing?
Yeah, I think I was just waiting and seeing, because the second film is always so difficult that I hope to like the second film, but don't expect to. So probably I was pleased that it wasn't awful. I was pleased that I did actually like some of the gags, but maybe it matched my expectations in that it wasn't as good as the first one.
And I had very low expectations. So since I wasn't such a fan of the first one, I wasn't expecting to like this at all. So the fact that I enjoyed it more than I thought I would is enough. I mean, I don't want to really watch it again. You know, I'm not rushing out to watch it in the cinema ever again.
See, we've got the view of someone that wasn't looking forward to it, two people that were semi-looking forward to it. What we need now is the opinion of someone that's not seen the first Guardians film, just to see it off the wall and get that view. David
Hasselhoff, maybe.
No, well, we're saving him for the Baywatch podcast special, coming soon to a podcast channel near you.
That film is out soon as well.
Yeah, it is. So he'll be doing press and all sorts. So, I'm really looking forward to hearing him on the podcast.
See if I manage to arrange an interview with him. Everyone's going to be
I am looking forward to you arranging the interview with him. Genuinely.
I'm going to have to contact his people now.
Yes, you will.
So, David Hasselhoff, if you're listening to this, we want to speak to you.
What, you're now wanting him to get in touch with your people?
Well. However it's facilitated, just so that he knows that, he's a desired guest on this podcast.
Yeah, see, he'll be busy now with the Baywatch tour.
Yes. And I can ask him about that one scene he did in the 2008 Knight Rider TV series. For the pilot episode. There we go. So, yeah, Marvel gives us another film. It's quite interesting that you almost can't... You can almost only judge Marvel films in relation to each other at this point. They're almost an entire genre unto themselves. It feels unfair to compare them to other films because they're just so... In terms of structure, they're so different because they're part of a cohesive whole rather than being... their own little thing largely. I mean, this is a film with a 3-act story, but to judge it in comparison to insert other sci-fi film here, it doesn't feel fair. So I don't know. I would put this somewhere in the middle of the Marvel pile, I guess. I've never updated my list since before Age of Ultron, so I'll have to do that at some point.
It's not at the bottom for me, but it's not in the top 5 either.
What is at the bottom?
Thor 2. That hideously awful film of no value.
Wow. Tune in next time for the Thor 2 podcast.
Yeah, we've got to do it with the cheesy chart rundown music. You know. That one.
Then get copyright claim.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sign of the Swinging Symbol, is it not out of copyright by now?
I don't know. Yeah, Aaron, maybe you need what I had with Star Trek Into Darkness. You know, you need that one more cathartic watch just to rant about it on a podcast.
I can't think of anything more likely to drive me up the wall than having to watch Thor 2 again.
Well, you could do what I did with Into Darkness and watch it in 15-minute chunks.
This is just prolonging the agony. That's just spreading the torture out.
No, with Into Darkness, I couldn't take it for much longer than 15 minutes at a time. That's why I was like, that's enough for today. It took me like 10 days to watch it. It was weird. But anyway, next up, we've got Spider-Man, which I'm looking forward to. That's next on the Marvel listing. So, excited about Spider-Man, people?
Yes.
Oh, that was the most convincing guess ever. That was,
yeah.
That was, what word will make this stop? Yes.
I know, I was trying to do a kind of next time on Marvel, kind of, you know.
Next time on Marvel Podcast. Yeah, looking forward to Spider-Man, looking forward to Thor, looking forward to them all, really. You know,
and there's the Inhumans, which is a hybrid between a film and a TV show.
And we've got the Defenders stuff coming out, and I've not watched Iron Fist yet. I've watched about 2 episodes, so I've got tons of Marvel to catch up on.
Yeah, and we have to catch up on the Defender stuff, even the stuff I don't like.
And you keep telling me that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s got a lot better, and I've not caught up on that either.
Yes, and there's Runaways, and there's Cloak and Dagger, and there's something else. Marvel is growing like Ego. Maybe Ego is Marvel. He's slowly spreading out to take over the universe. We've rumbled them. We've said too much.
And the blob's coming to get you.
That's it. Oh well. So on that note, I think we should end. Chris, thank you for attending.
You're welcome. I look forward to attending your interview with David Hasselhoff.
And Aaron, thanks to you for attending as well.
I likewise look forward to your David Hasselhoff interview and his appearance on this podcast.
So, that was our discussion on Guardians of the Galaxy Vol.2. Thanks to YouTuber Nstens1117 for the supply music. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or any major podcasting app. And we hope you'll join us on the next Kneel Before Pod.